off, obviously you have to bend these out of the way. The alternative would be to pull the manifold and unbolt them, but I've always been able to just take the bolt out right out of the way. Alright, so just bend it down just enough to get the covers off. Pull seal covers off. Don't have to do it exactly. Change a little pry back here. Just like that. Spin sections. So I keep the bolts with the top right cover, keep the bolts with the top left cover, and then keep the main bolts separate. On earlier cars, this here is actually a 6mm Allen. On this car, for whatever reason, it's an M8 triple square. This is a 2008. To show you guys, there is a bolt on the bottom. So if you forget that, you're going to break the cover. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to label this top left cover, driver's side. When I take the bolts out of here, I'm going to label those passenger, and then the main. Everything's going to have its own bag. I usually have my nice. Make sure you grab that, because if you don't, you're going to break the cover. Just going to gently tap. Like that. Gentle taps. Just like that. Push to the T30. That. Personal guide. This is the most common to fail. Alright, like I said, this is the most common to fail. Usually it fails right down the center. And this is what we upgrade with the JHM kit. We're just going to pop these little half moons out. That way we can get our timing tools in here. Now you want to rotate the motor, and this is our timing or our crank tool. So basically, you want to line these up so they're flat at the top of the head surface. That way, you can fit the timing tool. Now, occasionally, especially if the timing chain guides are broken, you'll see one off from the other, and you won't be able to get the tool in. You'll just need to grab a 24mm wrench and adjust the cam until you can get the tool in. See, these ones are pretty spot on. Make sure it's seated. For the crank pin, 8mm Allen. Usually you can just spin it off with your hand. Just like that. So if it's not lined up, you'll just have to move the crank. It's never perfect. You just want to make sure that hole is dead center. See, now she's dead center. We move the crank a little bit just to get it centered up. 10mm on the top. You'll actually feel it going in. You'll feel a little bit of resistance. You always want to double check after you put it in. Try to move the crank. The crank should not move a fraction. Now that we got the crank pin in, obviously you're going to try to move the crank. It should not move at all. So here's some pins I have from previous timing chain jobs. These are actually where it's going to go into the tensioner up here. Yeah, just to make sure that it doesn't pop out. Obviously this is for shipping purposes. If it doesn't go by hand, go pry bar always out. Gentle pressure. I'm going to let that oil release. I'm just going to slide this bad boy around there like that. I'm going to collapse this one here too, but most of the time this eyelet in here is plastic, so it just breaks. Give it a little gentle push, slide that guy right in there, and then here's the last one here. Gentle pressure, obviously not trying to break anything. Slide that guy right in there, just like that. So next we're going to break these loose here. You definitely want to keep a 24mm wrench on the cam with whatever one you are breaking. If you don't, you're going to bend that timing tool up there. Like I said, 24mm wrench. It's going to hold it here, and you're going to keep pressure on the tool, just so this doesn't pop out. This comes with every JHM timing tool kit, the triple square. Just like that. Go to the next one. See if he's holding it here. That, or you go to the other side. Oh, it's good. Again, holding pressure, holding the can. Go to the next one. Ready? Just like that. All right, so I'm going to start with the driver's side, bank 2. Up here, T30. Break these guys loose. And these ones here, unless you're replacing the chains, all total, usually I don't break these loose. These will just slide off. Some of the earlier years, there was actually a platform sitting on top, so you actually had to take that out. Especially here on this guy. On the earlier years, this little dowel right here loved to break. I'm just going to lay it down here. Usually keep everything separated, so this is going to be bank 2, this is going to be bank 1. I'll place the accessory drive here, and then the main we're going to be working with, so I'm not really going to lay it down, I'm just going to replace all the guides. There's the chain for this side. It helps to pull the bolts all the way out. Like that. You could actually rotate this out of position. And it just sits on the electrical adjuster right here. So here's bank 2. Try not to use the impact on these, they are torque yield. Again, pull the bolt all the way out. Put that down, you're going to rotate the mechanical adjuster out. Like that. Again, lay bank. This is bank 1, so I'm going to lay all bank 1 together. Just like that. It's going to be the next to come off. It's going to be these 4 bolts here. regular door panel popper tool. I use this just to kind of guide the chain over the ledge that is actually on the tensioner. Alright, so this one also, unlike all the other tensioners, has a seal on the back. You always want to replace that. We'll get to that later. It rolls off. You want to keep that the accessory tension. So now what we're going to do is we're going to replace this tensioner and these guides. Pops off just like that. Pull that out. You're just going to need to guide the chain over this little lip here. It's designed to keep the chain on the actual guide. Just kind of guide it over that lip back there. Just like that. Lay that down. The notorious broken one over here. Might take a little love to get out. It's had a hard life. Oh, come on. Pop that back in place. Just like that. Good video of that broken guy. Pop out the chain. You're going to have to loosen one of these two sprockets. You might have to do both of them, seeing how close it is right here to this lip. This should be just on a roller, basically a bearing. Pop that chain off. Leave that there for a second. Pull off just like that. If you look on the back, some of them are keyed. The earlier years are keyed, so it'll actually have to drop into that pin. This one's not, so it can go on in any orientation. Make sure that you have the same amount of links between the chains. You definitely don't want to try to put the incorrect chain in the wrong location. I've never done it, so I don't even know if you can, but I don't want to find out. We're going to go through, we're going to count the links, make sure it's the same amount of links from the one we're taking off. So this is the accessory drive chain. I went ahead and made sure it was 58 links. I'm going to go ahead and swap these guys out. So it's not a dry surface. Give the engine a little bit of time to start lubricating itself. Now when you're pushing this back on, definitely don't want to force it. Make sure that you go on the correct side of this dowel down here. It has to be slipped over the crank too. You kind of got to do these at the same time. And I'm just slipping it into the head back here. Sorry, the block. Just like that. Make sure they spin freely. Okay. So one by one, we're just going to go ahead and swap these out with our new parts. Graded one. Again, you want to just go ahead and give it a little bit of lube here. Slide this guy in here. Just got to make sure that that rear lip that's designed to keep the chain on is in the right place, or the chain in the right place. Again, brand new. A little bit of lube, the right side. Now the chain is directly in the middle, in between the two shoulders. According to Mitchell, it's 5 Newton meters plus a 90 degree. Honestly, I've never replaced it, never had a problem, but you are supposed to replace torque to yield. This one here, Bentley calls for 30 foot-pounds. Obviously, once you tighten these down, you want to make sure that they still rotate and there's no binding. This guy right here. Once you torque it, again, make sure no binding. Foot-pounds or 4 Newton meters, I believe. Let me do the conversion here. Oh, 6.8. That's not a very lot of force. And you're supposed to do a 90-degree turn. Calibrate here. Brand new. Get some lube in there. Door panel popper. You just want to kind of guide that chain over it. Just like that. Guide as you're pushing backwards on the guide itself. So now we're in the center of the guide on either shoulder. Or the shoulder should be on either side, so the chain should be in the middle. Definitely need to double check that out on every guide you put on. Take a little bit of lube, just right on the top there. Not a whole lot. You do the tensioner last, just so obviously you have slack to put each guide in. As you can see, when you put the tensioner in, it pushes up on this tensioning guide. So that's why you want to do it last. These are 10 Newton meters. That's about 7.37 foot-pounds. I'm going to do 8 foot-pounds. So, 8 foot-pounds. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and go to the accessory. This is this bad boy right here. This is the accessory chain tensioner. Like I said earlier, there is a seal that goes on the back of this, just like the others. It's this guy right here. To keep it in place, I use a little bit of assembly lube. This will wash out with oil pressure, so you definitely want to use something that will, and something that's not going to stick, cause issues. Alright, and then we're just going to go across it with some assembly lube, just like the others. Don't want dry surfaces, especially on a fresh start. Again, we're going to lube the chain up. I've already made sure we had the correct links and had the correct chain. You want to put on the car first, just like the other tensioner. It routes a little differently though. Just like this right there. I already have the bolts ready. If you look down here, because you're going to be holding the chain with one hand, you're going to be sliding this in with the other. Make sure your seal's in the right spot. Now that seal actually seals right here. Here's the oiling hole. You just want to make sure this surface is clean. Like I said, this one's a little bit more difficult to slide in. It's a little awkward. Alright, now if you look, right in the middle of the guide, there's your shoulder on either side of the chain, just like all the other tensioners and guides. Definitely don't want to be over that shoulder when you start it. You might throw a chain, start some grinding. There are 2 different size or 2 different length bolts. There's a shorter and a longer, 2 of each. I've already put the longer one in. But the longer ones go up here, shorter ones go down here. It's just the thickness variation of the tensioner. Alright, so these guys here, the accessory drive, 10 Newton meters. That equates to, 7.4 foot-pounds. Obviously you want to make sure that nothing's broken in here. No chunks of anything. These bolts are always replaced. They are torque to yield. See down here, we've already done a mechanical adjuster upgrade. And these are brand new bolts. Brand new guide. And brand new guide. For replacement of these. Make sure it doesn't pop up. Again, just a little bit of lube right on top. Nothing crazy. Move the chain. Over just like this. You're going to keep both sprockets loose for now. Obviously, the mechanical sprocket's not even on yet. Mechanical sprocket. Go slide in. Just like that. You want to make sure you're seated on the electrical adjuster. Screwing these in partially. You definitely want it to still rotate. You'll notice there's a cutout here, and that cutout is actually for this sprocket chain. Let's just slide in just like that. The last is going to be the tensioner. Just flip it up. You'll notice in here there's actually an oiling hole, and that oiling hole needs to match up here. And lube up the chain. Sprockets are loose. Mechanical is not even on yet. So, important step, you definitely want to make sure that the pin is dropped in before you even install these onto the car. Pin needs to be dropped in before you make any torque specs. Slide the sprocket in. Again, it's sitting on the electrical adjuster. You want to make sure that it's completely seated, be able to move. Again, lube on all guides. Just like this. Alright. You'll notice that this is actually cut out for here, and this right here is cut out for the sprocket. Last but not least, it's going to be the last tensioner we're going to install. Again, this one has an oiling hole, and you're definitely going to want to match up that oiling hole. Mitchell, 5 Newton meters plus 90 degrees. That equates to about 3.68 foot-pounds. do 90 degrees. This is the holder for the reluctor on the mechanical sprocket. So you're going to spin this in place. That's how that side should sit. This is how this side should sit. Like that. These guys right here, these little wedges are supposed to go into these tensioners when you're doing all the final torque specs. Just like that. They might try to pop out on you when you're doing the torque specs. If so, just pop them back in. It's not a big deal. And all the tensioners. 3 that Audi explains it in the Bentley Manual. If you look at the back of the motor, there's going to be 1, there's going to be 2, there's going to be 3, there's going to be 4. You're going to torque it in that sequence. And it's going to be 3 steps. First one's going to be 30 foot-pounds on 1, 2, 3, 4. Second one's going to be 73 foot-pounds on 1, 2, 3, 4. And the third one is going to be 90-degree turn on 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, when you're doing the torque specs, especially the 73 and the 90, you want somebody holding each cam as you're torquing it. You can't bend that tool. 30 foot-pounds. Second one, and most importantly, you need to have this holding tool on here, so the reluctor is in the right spot when you torque it. So when you torque it, if you don't have the holding tool in here, this reluctor is going to want to rotate, and then the computer's really not going to know what's going on. £30 Remember, reluctor locking tool is in place. So we're going to go to the next set. Alrighty. .73 foot-pounds. Again, someone's holding the front of the cam with a 24mm wrench. 73. I'm going to go to cam number 2. Electric tool in place. Cam number 4. Turn, you want to use an appropriate breaker bar, ratchet, whatever you got. You definitely want to have someone holding the motor because it can flip. We're going to 73, cam number 2. Like I said, if these fall out, just pop them back in. Tool in. Tool in. Final torque sequence. Crank pin out, so we can go ahead and rotate the motor. If you look in here after you pull the crank pin out, you definitely want to make sure that hole is directly in the middle, make sure it didn't slip. And this is before rotating the motor. All 4 cams are flat with the surface. So after we rotated the motor twice, we definitely want to make sure that our timing tool drops in. And it is not uncommon to have to give it a gentle little tap to get it to pop in. You got to remember everything is dry right now. The only thing that's holding the tensioners open is a spring. There's no one open. If you come to the front of the motor, you'll see cams are flat and they are in line with the deck surface. And if you look in here, you will see that the hole for the crank pin is lined up. So now we got everything in time. We're going to go ahead and clean the surfaces, put the rear covers back on. Usually use a razor blade. Definitely don't want to gouge anything. It is aluminum. You just want to use a razor blade and go really lightly. Like I said, don't gouge it. It is aluminum. Don't want to use a Scotch pad or anything like that. And then I also have a flat bottom brush that works pretty well. Again, you don't want to be too abrasive. And as you can see over here, we've already done the back covers. If you look on the ground, all the sealing surfaces are pretty clean. We'll be replacing these gaskets. Most importantly are these grooves that Audi has cut into them. These are actually the paths for the sealant itself. You'll see it on each top cover, and you'll also see it on the bottom cover. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and reseal the back covers. This is the main girdle. Audi actually specifies to apply sealant in this groove here, all the way around. You're also going to apply a thin layer on each bolt hole. So if you look at this, this is our sealant that comes with the kit. And here's the final application, or final picture of everything after it's been properly applied. Again, we went through all the grooves. And then when you look at the bolt holes, we did just a nice thin layer, nothing too crazy. So you'll notice if you look here, there's an alignment down here, an alignment dowel over here. If you look at the actual cover itself, there are holes to accept the dowels, so everything will line up perfectly. Want to be careful not to scrape off your brand new sealant you just applied. Okay, so the smaller bolts you see around here, we're going to be 10 Newton meters, and that equates to 7.4 foot-pounds. The larger bolt is going to be 22 Newton meters, which is going to equate to 16.2 foot-pounds. Some models, earlier models, were held in with the Phillips. This particular one is actually a T20. clean that surface with some brake clean and a rag.
Alright.
There's the new seal. There's a groove on the bottom you need to put the sealant into, and also you need to seal these surfaces here. So what I do is I'll put it on there and just spread it with my finger. Give it a smooth, even application. Brand new seal, clean the surface. Okay, so the installation of this cover, obviously we have the sealant applied. When you're going on to the motor, definitely you need to feed this through. You need to watch to make sure that you don't scrape the silicone. Careful with the cans. Just like that. Couple bolts in to hold the cover. Get a second to grab it. Applies 10 Newton meters for the smaller bolts, and there's only smaller bolts on the upper covers. And you need to start from the center, work your way out. The glass cover on. Again, you need to feed the wire through, just like that. Make sure no surfaces contact while you're Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and go over the last seal we're going to install for this video. It's just for the electrical adjuster. These get really hard. Sometimes they'll start to crack. Here's the new seals. Just put a little bit of Silglide, any type of lube. Fits in there just like that. This just slides right on through. Like that. The top portion actually has a holder for the coil pack harness. And then the bottom portion is going to be a tapered bolt, just like that. And again, book says 10 Newton meters. This side has both bolts are tapered. 10 newton meters, that equates to 7.4 foot-pounds.